The future of mobility is at a critical inflection point. Every time oil prices spike or climate change is debated or discussed, EVs are inevitably mentioned as part of the solution. While India is at the infancy of adoption of EVs, it has a significant market potential going forward. In this episode of The Third Umpire, we talk about the hurdles being faced in the EV adoption in India and the road ahead for the EVs. We also throw some light on the recently concluded 5G spectrum auctions and understand how 5G could be a game changer in India. You're watching Informed Investor, The Third Umpire, an initiative by Research and Ranking. Let's begin. Countries across the globe are creating new policies to counter climate change. India is the third largest carbon emitting country in the world. So the Indian government is under tremendous pressure to reduce its carbon emissions. The India Electronics and Semiconductor Association estimated that over 7 crore EVs could be sold in India till 2030. This would be on the back of the changes in technology landscape as well as a clear vision set by the Indian government for EV adoption in India. This transition of the auto sector from petroleum-based internal combustion engines to EVs would create a market of about 750 gigawatt hours of advanced energy storage solutions over the next decade. The electrification of transport sector presents a huge opportunity for cleaning up the air quality and also improve national energy security by reducing petrol import dependence. Given the domestic demand as well as export potential, India has an opportunity of becoming a global hub for R&D and manufacturing of EVs while achieving this transition. The trend in India towards EVs is gradually gaining momentum. Data from the Ministry of State for Heavy Industries shows that there are now over 1 million EVs registered in India. Registrations of EVs increased from 1,61,000 in 2019 to 4,19,000 in 2022. The Indian EV ecosystem is currently in the initial stages of development but has been gaining traction. In 2021, EV registrations amounted to approximately 330,000 units, which is a jump of 168% from those in 2020. Among this, electric two-wheelers account for approximately 48% and electric three-wheelers account for approximately 47% of the total number of vehicles sold in the market. Registrations in 2022 are set to increase and have already crossed the 120,000 units mark in the first quarter of 2022. When we look at the region-wise adoption of EVs, UP tops the list of states with the highest EV registrations in the country with a 20% share, followed by Karnataka and Tamil Nadu. Of the overall electric two-wheeler registrations, approximately 67% of them were from Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Telangana and Rajasthan. The majority of electric three-wheelers were registered in UP, Bihar, Assam and Delhi, collectively accounting for 75% of the total sales. Maharashtra, however, boasts of the highest sales of passenger vehicles with 3,700 units. The EV industry has seen a drastic change over the last decade. India, however, lacks considerably in terms of the EV penetration compared to other larger markets. Netherlands currently has an EV adoption rate of 37%, which is the highest in the world, followed by Germany, Canada and UK, which have an EV adoption rate of over 10%. The EV penetration in India currently stands at roughly about 2%. Now, in terms of the hurdles in the EV adoption, the first one is that of cost concerns. EVs are currently sold at a 20 to 50% premium in the case of two and four-wheelers as compared to the traditional internal combustion engine vehicles. This high upfront cost is not favorable for the price-conscious Indian consumers who would rather prefer a cheaper internal combustion engine vehicle. Though the higher cost can be offset by the low fuel expenses and running and maintenance costs as well as tax incentives, it is still a deciding factor for many since one can buy a bigger petrol car for the same price. India is looking at a dramatic reduction in the EV prices over the next 2 years with rapid strides in technology and green fuel, which will help bring down costs at par with petrol automobiles in the country. The price of lithium-ion batteries are also coming down. Additionally, India is looking at developing a compound of zinc-ion, aluminium-ion, and sodium-ion batteries as an alternative as well. The second one is the hurdle of EV charging stations. The lack of adequate charging infrastructure in our country is a huge barrier to increase EV penetration. Compared to traditional petrol stations, charging stations are harder to find. As seen in the graph, India currently has the lowest penetration for EV charging stations amongst other comparable economies. The government needs to focus on building a supply chain by manufacturing batteries domestically. India should focus more on attracting foreign battery manufacturers as well as domestic players to set up local production facilities. It will help to lower the cost of batteries and EVs, improving the cost competitiveness. India also needs to build sustainable charging infrastructure to manage the higher load in the coming years. The third is the power supply shortage. India recorded a power supply shortage of 1,201 million units in the month of October 2021. This was the highest in 5.5 years due to a crunch in the coal stocks available with thermal plants. To have the revolutionary switch to electric vehicles, India needs to address the basic issue of power shortage. Lack of constant power supply in villages and smaller towns, and metros like Delhi and NCR having major breakdowns for hours at a stretch is another factor hampering the adoption of EVs at a large scale. Fourth is the frequent fire incidents. Over the recent past, a series of fire instances of EVs, specifically the electric two-wheelers catching fire in various parts of the country, has left consumers and stakeholders worried. Currently, EVs are powered by the lithium-ion, also known as the Li-ion battery packs. They are generally considered to be lightweight and efficient. However, excessive heat can be harmful to the Li-ion batteries as they pose a fire risk and the battery can catch fire or explode in extreme circumstances. While it's easy to attribute the EV fires to rising temperatures, experts suggest looking at how the Li-ion battery is packed and designed as well. In the last 6 months, electric two-wheelers manufactured by Okinawa Autotech, Pure EV, Ola Electric and Jitendra EV made frequent headlines for fire cases. Since then, about 7,000 vehicles have been recalled so far after the government asked the EV players to halt any new model launches till they were done investigating the fire incidents with a warning to penalize the automakers. In relative terms, the number of EVs going up in flames is still minuscule compared to over 2.3 lakh units sold in the last fiscal. Additionally, the government is in the process of formulating and issuing quality-centric guidelines for the EVs. Fifth reason is the longer charging time. While a petrol or a diesel car can be refueled within minutes, it takes about 6 to 8 hours easily to charge an electric car at home. Even with fast chargers and bigger batteries, it takes about 35 to 60 minutes to get an 80% charge. This is another reason for the skepticism towards EV adoption. The sixth reason is the research and development. India still falls behind on strong R&D capacity, and consecutively manufacturers rely mostly on technological know-how borrowed from their foreign counterparts for the EV components. Main research areas related to EV components are the constituents of the cells of lithium-ion batteries, since these constitute the most expensive components requiring significant research in these areas. Research is required to be undertaken on high priority on EV components to make way for affordable and efficient adoption of the EVs. However, this scenario is also changing, and the ARAI has been leading research on EVs and the fast charging technologies as per the requirements of the Indian market. So what lies ahead for the EVs in India? Now, we believe that the road to an EV future still has a few potholes, but these challenges can be fixed. A substantial infrastructure that is affordable, accessible, and serves all consumer groups, coupled with a strong ecosystem, policy incentives, and technological advancements, is likely to poise the EV market for significant growth in the coming decade. The future of EVs in India seems very bright. The Indian government wants to join the electric vehicle revolution, and according to the sources, they plan to have 30% of private cars, 70% of commercial vehicles, 40% of the buses, and close to 80% of two-wheelers and three-wheelers go electric by 2030. India plans to make 10 million two-wheelers every year, which is about 15% of the world's production. Recent policies that were introduced, including battery swapping policy aimed at an encouraging move towards green energy generation and decentralization of the energy distribution, is likely to create a well-established infrastructure across the country while instilling customer confidence in riding EVs on the Indian roads. Even with the challenges in the EV industry, what's interesting to note is that the EV market has observed strong attention from the PE or VC investors in India, with investments increasing from $181 million in 2020 to $1.71 billion in 2021, recording an annual growth of 849%. Substantial investments in the EV segment can help boost operations. Additionally, in the case of foreign investment, 100% FDI is allowed in the EV sector under the automatic route. Taking advantage of the same and the incentives provided under the legal framework of the central and the state government of India, several major investments have been made by the foreign countries in India. Now, is it true that India needs 46,000 EV charging stations to match China and US in the EV infrastructure? Well, yes, we think so. While the EV opportunity has long been seen as a game changer for the auto sector in India, the EV charging station penetration needs to increase drastically in order to be able to provide the necessary infrastructure support for the sector's growth. What about the regulatory intervention required to accelerate EV transition in India? Well, it is absolutely required. The government at all the three levels, center, state and municipal, is expected to play a crucial role in supporting the EV adoption by acting as a regulator and developing standards, specifications, performance benchmarks, and an institutional framework. This will help in building consumers' trust and propel the growth of the EVs in the country. India's mobile telecom journey has been quite unprecedented. From the first mobile phone call back in July 1995 to the expected 5G launch, we've seen several transformations over the years. Last week, as the 5G spectrum auction concluded, India entered the League of Nations that have this coveted technology. The fifth generation of mobile networks, or 5G as it's known, is a radical transformation of cellular technology. Now, even before we dive deeper into what the 5G spectrum auctions would mean for the telecom companies and to the economy as a whole, let's understand how 5G differentiates itself from 4G. 5G has lower latency. Latency denotes the time it takes for a packet of information to travel between any 2 points. No matter how fast the connection is, data transfer will always be delayed to some extent. In the case of 4G, latency is between 60 milliseconds to 100 milliseconds, while 5G promises a latency of less than 5 milliseconds. Lower the latency, the faster the download speed. 5G promises a much higher speed compared to 4G. 4G networks offer a top speed of around 100 megabytes per second, but out in the real world, the actual speed stands at about 35 megabytes per second. 5G is touted to be 100 times faster than that of 4G, with a top speed of roughly 20 gigabytes per second, and the real world speeds ranging between 50 megabytes per second and 3 gigabytes per second depending on the connection. With 5G, downloads and streaming will happen without any delay. Say you are catching a long flight and you've only got a couple of minutes to download a movie. This is where 5G comes into the picture, where you will be able to download a movie in less than a minute. 5G's call density will be higher than 4G. Experts claim that 5G will offer more call density and better network capacity so that more users and connected devices can be supported. While 4G promised such lofty goals, it never came to fruition. 5G is not solely dependent on cell towers for transmission. 4G and 5G will have different base stations for transmitting signals. While 4G signals are transmitted solely from cell towers, high-band 5G signals will be sent out from small boxes across various locations. Cell towers will still be needed for lower frequency 5G spectrum. Now, while we've understood how 5G has the potential to be the game changer, let's understand what happened at the 5G auctions concluded last week. In the 5G spectrum auctions, over 1.5 lakh crore rupees in revenue were generated after 7 days and 40 rounds of bidding. Reliance Jio emerged as the highest bidder and maintained its position as the market leader. Of the 72,098 megahertz that were up for sale, the Indian government was able to sell 51,236 megahertz of telecom airways, which is about 71% of the total up for sale. Reliance Jio emerged as the top buyer in the auction, buying 24,740 megahertz of airwaves for roughly about 88,000 crore rupees, while Airtel spent 43,080 crore rupees. Vodafone Idea spent a total of 18,800 crores, while Adani Enterprises spent only 212 crores to set up a private telecom network not aimed for public networks. Now that the telcos have a sufficient quantity of spectrum, all that matters going forward is the quality of services and the quality of subscribers that justify the huge investments made in the spectrum auction. There are many reasons to be happy with how the latest 5G spectrum auctions have progressed. The funds that the government would receive from the auction is far larger than the initial projections of roughly 70,000 crores, which were later increased to nearly 1 lakh crores. It has also exceeded predictions made by rating agency ICRA, which stated in June that the sale of the spectrum might bring in as much as 1.1 lakh crore rupees. Initially, the government had predicted that the 700 MHz spectrum might not attract any buyers because it had failed to find a buyer in the previous auctions. However, with a value of 39,720 crores, it garnered the second highest numbers of overall offers. The money obtained from the 5G auctions will support in increasing the non-tax revenues for the government and aid in reducing its fiscal deficit. This comes at a time when the government has had to lower its expectations for its disinvestment plans while it continues its fight with inflation. While the 5G spectrum auctions have turned out to be successful, let's try and understand some of the factors affecting the telecom sector. The first one is the number of active subscribers. An active subscriber is any customer who has an active plan on their number. This means that they are actively paying fees to the telcos instead of having a dormant number only to receive calls. The chart below shows the subscriber additions by top telcos in the country. Airtel subscriber base additions have seen a slow but steady growth, while Reliance Jio's subscriber numbers have been very volatile. Vodafone Idea, on the other hand, has been losing on an average of over 1 million subscribers every month. In some good news for the overall industry, the total active subscriber base increased by 4 million in May. While Airtel and Jio contributed over 6.6 million new subscribers, Vodafone Idea lost about 2.3 million active subscribers. The second is the debt position. Telecom in India is a price-sensitive and a competitive market. The sector is capital intensive and has to consistently invest in upgrading technology and improving services. A tariff war initiated by the entry of new players in the previous decade resulted in severe financial distress for the companies. Therefore, the investment made towards 5G could potentially further stress the sector's debt position. Cash flow being generated from businesses has been improving. The latest spectrum auction will help improve the sector's operational viability by lowering the repayment burden. For the first time ever, there has been no mandatory requirement to make any upfront payment. The payment for the spectrum is to be made in 20 equal annual installments in advance at the beginning of each year. This will help in potentially lowering the operational costs for telcos and provide them an opportunity to spur their respective ARPUs, or the average revenue per users. While the debt matrix for the industry might look stretched, the improving cash flow position with improvement in ARPU levels is a healthy indication for the sector collectively. Third are the reforms. A number of structural reforms and procedural reforms have been announced in the telecom sector. These reforms have created a very positive and forward-looking environment for the telecom industry. Among all the measures, the recently announced revival package, combining both short-term relief in the form of a 4-year moratorium for financially stressed entities and the long-term measures for the entire industry in the form of amending the definition of adjusted gross revenue and scrapping spectrum usage charges in future auctions, was a much anticipated silver lining for the sector. The reforms have allowed 100% FDI under the automatic route in the telecom sector. Earlier, 100% FDI in the telecom sector was permitted, but only 49% through the automatic route, and FDIs above 51% was through the government route. While 5G auctions have gone pretty well, it is now time to talk about implementation. The mass rollout of 5G is likely to take some time. Considering that it will take a few months for the 5G rollout, the services are expected to be implemented in phases. Urban areas with higher telecom tower density and a higher number of 5G handsets are likely to be the first to witness the implementation. The segment of the economy that would be benefited from the launch of 5G services includes manufacturing, logistics, education, hospitals, campuses, and factories. The biggest entry barrier for the end customer would be the 5G handsets, which currently cost 15,000 rupees and above and are out of reach for many. Availability of affordable handsets will be a deterrent for the major uptake in 5G. Presently, less than 10% of the smartphones in India support 5G. One of the drawbacks of 5G is that it will not bridge the digital divide between rural and urban in the short term. Rather, it may increase it. There are other challenges that include adding more telecom towers to meet the traffic and extensive fiberization of the network so that the towers do not get choked. Most sites need fiber optic connectivity, and more the amount of fiber optic cables, the better the connectivity. This becomes all the more necessary as 5G matures and India moves into the second and the third years of the rollout. The poor financial health of Indian telcos is another key concern that will certainly impact their 5G strategy. Additionally, a pan-India rollout of infrastructure would require significant capital investment from the telcos. So will 5G be a game changer in India? Well, yes, it would be. To conclude, if you ask us whether 5G will be a game changer for India, the answer is yes. However, it will take some time to be launched. What now remains to be seen is its steadfast implementation, plugging of infrastructural loopholes, and the availability of affordable devices so that the proliferation across the country can be placed at a quick pace. While we've covered the fallout of Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan in our previous episode of The Third Umpire, here are some fun facts about Taiwan which caught our attention. The state of Maharashtra, which is 307,713 square kilometer, is 8.5 times larger than that of Taiwan, which is spanned across 35,980 square kilometer. It takes just 8 hours to drive around the entire nation of Taiwan. Taiwan is located on the Pacific Ring of Fire, making it an earthquake-prone region. It is regularly impacted by over 1,000 perceivable earthquakes a year and over 17,000 non-perceivable earthquakes. Taiwan is the most populous state and the largest economy that is not a member of the UN. Instant noodles and bubble tea were invented in Taiwan. The garbage trucks in Taiwan play music, sometimes even Western classical music. Taiwan dominates the global semiconductor industry as 70% of the world's semiconductor foundries are located in the country. On that note, I would like to wish you all a great weekend ahead and take this opportunity to wish you all a very happy 75th Independence Day. Thank you, stay invested, stay safe.
Did you like watching this video? Then download our app, Informed Investor, to watch more such informative and interesting videos.